we are going to sketch out the front view of this shape right here. And what faces make up the front view is this face and this face right here. These two faces, they're kind of hard to make out, but I mean, what I'm marking with my pencil, I guess. But these two faces make the front view.
So let's go ahead and take a look at this shape in our 3D modeling software. And so if we look at these two faces, the two faces that I'm talking about when I say they're the only ones we can see from the front view, this is what I mean. If I look at it from the front, I can't see these other faces. I can't see any of these faces from my front view. They just look like lines or edges to me.
And it's kind of hard to see from this lens. Let me see if I can darken it so I can make it a little bit clearer. These brackets, you have to look pretty closely. I'm going to go ahead and darken these brackets for the sake of the video, but you should be able to see it very light, and they represent the top and the bottom and the left and the right of our front view. And of course, if you look, they match. They line up with the left and the right, lines up with the left and the right of this top view up here, and this side view over here matches with the heights as well. And so basically, okay, let's go ahead and label this. This is going to be our top view right up here. And so if you look, we can see these are the faces that we can see if we look at it from like a helicopter view from the top.
So let's actually take a look at this from the helicopter view. Let's look at this from the top and you can see what I'm talking about. These two faces are the only two faces that I can see from the top. These other four faces you cannot see. Again, they just look like edges to us from the top view.
Whereas we can see this face and this face and this face, 1, 2, 3, from the side view, or the right side view. So I'll label this as the right side view, although this word side is the important part.
And so let's go ahead and highlight these three faces. If we look at these three faces from our side view, they are all we can see from our side view. These other three faces you cannot see from this right side.
And this will be our front view. Let's try to spell front correctly. This will be our front view right here that we're going to sketch. And the heights and the widths should match. And so I'm going to go ahead and use these lines that I see to draw out some very, very light, what we call construction lines. And so they should be lines that you can barely make out, and so they're very, very thin lines. So we can go ahead and actually, I'm not going to draw all of them just yet. I'm just going to draw the bottom and the top, just light construction lines, and they're not as dark as what we call an object line. We'll get to that in a second. It should be something that you can barely see, just a very, very light line. I don't even push down with my pencil. My pencil just follows my ruler, and so I find the line, I line my straight edge of my ruler up with it, and I simply let the pencil touch the paper and I follow the straight edge. That's it. And so that's the left side of the face, and then over here we have the right side of the face, or the right side of the view. I'm sorry, I dropped my pencil there. So you just have very, very light construction lines. And then we look over here and we see what we are going to sketch. And so I know that it goes from here, from the top all the way to the bottom. This front face is an entire line. So I'm going to go ahead and darken this construction line here into an entire object line for ourselves. And so you just use that straight construction line to darken an object line. And hopefully you can see how much darker an object line is than a construction line. You have to be able to tell the difference between the two. That's kind of the whole point. The construction lines help you construct or sketch the object, but if the construction lines are too light, just erase them a little bit. They should be able to be seen to help you, line up and make sure your heights and widths all match, but they should be much, much lighter. Now, if you look here, this bottom face right here will go all the way to the right. We can't see this face, the side face, from the front, so it'll just kind of look like these two kind of line up.
So let's go ahead and look at exactly what I mean when I say we can't see this face from the front view. And so it's highlighted, but from our view, we can't see it. And so what does that end up looking like to us? Well, since these two edges are at the same height, they end up looking like one line to us from the front face.
So, but I can tell that it goes from the left to the right, and it just does make one big line. And so I'm kind of using my total width and my total height, as well as this isometric view, to sketch out what the front view will be. And so I just darken this construction line. I kind of messed it up a little bit, but I'm darkening the construction line into an object line to the end of this other construction line that I drew, which is the far right of our shape. And now I know from here it's going to go up some amount, and I know from here it's going to go to the right some amount. The question is how much? Well, what I have to do is find my other lines. And so there's a second and third line here. I'm sorry, well, we already have two, so this would be a third and a fourth line in the middle going down, these widths that we can measure from the top view. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up with my handy-dandy ruler with this straight edge of mine, and I'm just going to draw another construction line. And it kind of tells me a little bit more about the object. And so we just go ahead and line that up and draw it straight down. We want to make sure we keep it straight when we draw it. Just a light construction line. You can barely see it, and that's kind of the whole idea. But there's one more. And so we'll go ahead and go to this edge as well and also draw a light construction line going all the way to the bottom. So hopefully you can see those, but barely compared to the object lines. And then we'll do the same thing with these two lines. We need to extend these two height lines to the left towards our front view, because that'll tell us the actual height of our front view. And it's important that you make it match. If you don't make it match, then it's wrong. The whole point is to make sure that the heights stay consistent. If it's this tall over here, it's this tall over here. It doesn't change. If it does change, if it's not straight, if it doesn't line up, you will not get credit for the shape, and you will have to redo it. Okay, and so the next question is what do these construction lines represent? Why do we sketch them? And so if we look here, well, I can see that this line right here, this edge, is this edge. And so what it would represent from the front view is the end of this up and down line. From there, it slants inward. And so I know I'm going to draw an object line up until that point, and from that point it's going to be a slant. Where does it end? Well, we have to draw the rest. Okay, and so if we look here, what does this construction line right here represent? Well, if we look up here, okay, it's the right side of this face right here. What is that face? Well, that's this up here. And so if we look at that from the front view, we can see that that line would represent this edge right here. And so that's where the slant begins. And so we draw it inward a little bit. So we say, okay, well, what happens after that? Well, if we look from this straight edge, from this point right here, from this edge, this line that we drew, what happens is it slants to this other corner. Okay, so let's go ahead and just line up our handy-dandy ruler, our handy-dandy straight edge, and make sure those corners line up. And all I'm going to do, this will be an object line, not a construction line. I'm just going to go ahead and connect this with an object line.
If we look at our 3D model version of this shape and we look at the front view, we can see that slant that we created. It's starting from this edge right over here off to the right, and it's ending at this top edge right here, and the rest of this just looks like one straight diagonal line.
And so the last thing is, well, what is this? We've used all the other lines. We've used all the other construction lines. We've used this one to start our slant, and we used this one to end our slant, and these two represented the width, the total width, and these two represented the total height. And so we've used all of our edges, except we haven't used this construction line or this construction line. And what do they represent? Well, they represent basically where this face ends and this face begins, and they're separated by this edge right here that we can't see. This face right here is just going to be from the front. It's just going to look like, well, an object line. That's all you'll be able to see from the front. It's kind of like, well, these two faces, they just look flat to us, right? If you look at it from the side, these two faces look like they're right next to each other. In fact, all three of these faces from the side look like they're just right next to each other, and that's kind of the point. And so from the front view, this is exactly what it would look like.
So let's take one last look at this and see exactly what we're talking about when we say this face can't be seen from the front face. To us, it just looks like a line down the middle, and then these two faces are just right next to each other. Just like in the side view, these three faces all look like they're just right next to each other. They look flat to us from the side view.
And again, if you don't get your heights lined up, you don't get your widths lined up, and you don't have your construction lines barely visible, this shape is wrong, and you will have to try it again. But that's how you sketch a front view using construction lines.